in all that we do. Amen.
I will call to order the special meeting for December 20th, 2022. Welcome citizens. Do we have any citizens? Everybody here is staff. So I'm going to skip our call for public comment cards.
Okay.
Our agenda item for today is to approve the advertisement for a public hearing to create Spring Park Elementary attendance zones and revise the attendance zones to surrounding impacted existing schools.
So if I could, just to kind of review where we've been. We've got a new board, 2 new board members come on. We delayed the board workshop till December 5th so they could be involved in this process. We had a board meeting. We had that meeting on a Monday, then the board meeting was going to be on the Thursday, so we felt it appropriate to delay the actual advertising till now to let it absorb a little bit. So it's been 15 days since you've seen the presentation for that, and there's been no questions cited on this. But remember, you had 4. Lance Addison came up and gave an excellent presentation describing various options. And the one that we're advertising is option B. And the reason why we're advertising it is it's one of the only ones that balance zones, simplified transportation, relief capacity, portable reduction, and address growth, the 5 metrics that we used. From here, what's going to happen is right after this will be the vote to advertise it, simply meaning we're advertising it. The actual vote, the public hearing, is February 2nd. In between then, several things happen. One, we'll send a letter out to all parents that are affected. We'll get a letter from the school district explaining this to them. There'll be a community meeting on the 17th of January at Green Cove Junior High Cafeteria at 6:30 for people to come and voice their concerns. I would be remiss, being a KG veteran of this district, to not remind board members that a couple things will happen. People are very passionate about where their child goes to school, and rightfully so. You'll have some folks that'll say, I want my child to go to that school. Why can't my child go to that school? You'll also have folks that'll say, I want my child to stay at their current school. And that's just part of that process. So with that, what I'm asking for is for the board to go ahead and move forward with a motion to advertise the attendance zone for Spring Park Elementary. Remember, once you advertise that, you cannot go back and change without resetting the clock of 28 days in order to have a public hearing. Also, as a reminder, the March board meeting is when we have allocations for the new school, right? We have to figure out how much staff goes to that school. There's a whole process that we go through with folks applying for that happens earlier than our contractual language in April to make all that happen. So I'm just kind of pointing out all of the timelines so you kind of understand what happens here with that.
All right. So at this time, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the opportunity to advertise for Spring Park Elementary's boundaries.
I have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries 5-0. Do we need to vote on the computer, Miss Honora?
We do, but I'm having an issue, so I will record your votes later if that's all right.
Okay.
5 ayes, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And did you get, I forgot to announce the motion and the second.
I got
Did you
that,
it?
yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. We have public comment, but it is for our agenda review. Do you have anything left to add, Mr. Superintendent?
No, I don't. That's it.
All right.
Best fast meeting ever.
Very quick. Mr. Bickler, anything to add?
Nothing.
Anything from the board? Okay. So at this time, I will adjourn this meeting. And we will move on to our workshop. So we do have a citizen that's joined us. I apologize for missing you earlier. We welcome you and we welcome your input on our meeting. This is a workshop, so we will be receiving comment, but not questions. And you'll have an opportunity to speak when we get to that portion of the agenda.
It's flipped. We accept questions,
Questions,
but not
not
comments.
comments. I'm sorry.
So whatever you say in the question form.
All right, so the first item on our agenda is to review the draft agenda for the January 5th regular meeting. Mr. Rowley.
All right, awesome. We got lots to discuss today. For recognition, we won't have a school showcase because it's the first day back for students. If you can kind of envision January 5th and what's going to be happening there. We do have some recognition. We'll recognize our Art in the Capital winner, who's Tony West, a 6th grader at Lake Asbury Elementary. We're also going to recognize our academic team champions and our 5 finalists for teacher and school-related employees of the year.
Just a point, the academic team champions also has a number of all-county band members, and they have their first practice that evening with the guest conductor. So whoever we can include to say go quick, they have to leave and go to, I think it was Lake Asbury Junior High or Lakeside Junior High for that first practice.
So I would anticipate this meeting to go quicker than most because there is no school showcase and limited amount of recognition. People are coming back off the holidays. So I think we'll be in great shape there for that. Okay, first agenda items is the minutes for the organizational meeting, the school board workshop, and the discipline hearings on December 8th. Any questions on that? Ms. Nora does an awesome job with that and getting that out to you. Next is the employee work calendar for 23-24. Pretty standard item for the board. Next is controlled open enrollment. Florida statute 1002.31 directs school districts to come up with a controlled open enrollment plan. Recent legislation now requires us to post that every 12 weeks. So we actually do it rolling throughout the year. On like the third page of that, it tells you the dates for 23-24, which is September 11th, December 4th, February 24th, and May 30th. So it gives us up to date when seats are available. I want to remind the board that it's based on an 80% threshold, and also the fact that there's, we do not, when we open a new school, include them within the controlled open enrollment policy. So that is controlled open enrollment in a nutshell. Next, we have a school board member out of county travel. It'll be a riveting budget meeting, I am sure. I'm sure of it.
It's a good one.
It's awesome. Next is Synergy Distance Learning Training Portal. So this is a additional training mechanism for our employees. Let me just say this, about Synergy. I had some conversation with board members relative to this item. And basically, IT did a survey of all the users of that, and one of the things that came back glaringly was that they wanted more training on it. Any time that you do a conversion, I've lived through terms to Focus, I've lived through terms to BP on the management side, I lived through Microsoft to Google. And now, we're in the second year of implementation of Synergy. And just remind the board that it took 10 years for us to get to the point where we were for Focus. So each year, as each process is done, we evaluate each process and how efficiently we get through that. And in school systems, there's a lot of one-time events, right? First time we issue report cards. The first time we issue credits to high school students. The first time that we schedule courses within there in order to place students in a schedule. A lot of first-time events, so we've been through the first time. One of the things that happens, though, is that many times users of products such as this don't realize that there are shortcuts and there are different ways to do that, and only through use do you get that, as well as training. And that's what this one is about. And I did put a brochure in your pile of goodies on this product. Any questions about that?
Since I use Synergy
Yeah.
in its first year, it said it was training for non-instructional and administrative employees was part of the request. Is it something we go into and teachers can pick what instructional employees can pick what they feel like they need to be trained on?
Yeah, the training for that, and of course, we always look to improve and revamp the training on that. When we look at the users of the product, the ones that actually integrate with the product more are the people that work within the system. And I know that teachers, obviously with grade books, work within the system also, but not to the level of complexity when you're enrolling, when you're scheduling, when you're doing all of those things. So, the teacher's work is, of course, important, and they're integrating with the program, but the complexity of the work is really not to the level of all those other users, and that's the reason why there's additional training focusing on them.
May I ask a question also? And
Sure.
it says you offer 31 training courses with over 150 lessons providing step-by-step. I think the greatest complaint, sorry, I don't like bringing complaints, but the greatest complaint that I heard was that when working with IEPs, the ESE secretaries, the ESE teachers were having difficulty combining the IEPs from Focus with the IEPs from Synergy. Has that been somewhat resolved, do we know?
So the issue is that we have a program called ESE Star that did that, and then trying to convert over is going to take time to convert over all of those IEPs. Remember, we're talking about 11,000
That's right.
ESE students in the district. So as we integrate with the program more, you're going to see improvement in that process. And every day is a learning adventure.
Is that happening at every new IEP at that point when they create a new one?
Would be in the
That would
system.
be in.
They move it?
Probably.
Okay, next, we're on to the personnel consent agenda. You'll notice instructional division job descriptions in there and all of the normal transfers, resignations, hirings, etc. This one becomes extremely thick once we get to reappointment time, so that'd be every employee's name in a separate book, in a separate item, away from the personnel consent agenda. Next, we have academic services out-of-state travel. Next, we have secondary summer school ESE extended school year calendars. This is kind of like a save the date, because as we're working with our ESE students and determining those that need extended school year services, those dates have to be there. There'll be a complete catalog of all of these at a later month's agenda item. We're simply trying to save the date here, as well as elementary programs will also be included in the next round of that. Next is an affiliation agreement between LabCorp and the School District of Clay County. This will enable our phlebotomy students at adult and community ed, as well as our CTE students, to do clinicals and collect blood. Next is an affiliation agreement with Moreland University to place interns, practicums, and observations with teachers in Clay County. Next is the school improvement plans. This item typically doesn't come to the board, but due to a change in legislation, it is being brought to you. School improvement plans have been a standard in Florida schools for 15, 20 years or longer, really. So this is really not a new process. I'll remind you that each school in Clay County does at least 2 academic areas of focus, as well as one culture environmental goal. The state kind of categorizes schools into what's called RAISE schools, CSI schools, which stands for Comprehensive Support and Improvement, or TSI schools, which are Targeted Support and Improvement. Not all Clay County schools fit into one of those categories, but we think it's important that every school have a school improvement plan, whether it's mandated by the state or not, which is why you'll see that. There's a link. There's a link simply because each one is about 20 pages. So we were not going to print or put out that information in that way. If you were curious about a school, you can go to the link and see everybody's plan. So it's anything really new. The only thing that's changed is now the state wants board approval, where before we didn't bring it to the board because we didn't have to bring it to the board. So now you're going to see that whole process. I would say I'll give a shout out to Laura Fogarty and her group, because it goes to Laura. Laura then has a whole checklist of things that she checks for each one to make sure that we meet all the requirements for the school improvement plan. Of course, the big focus is on subgroups, whether it's students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, ethnicity, ELL, etc. All of those subgroups are taken into account. Any questions on school improvement plans? Next is proposed allocation changes. You can see very little changes in there. One of the things that I would call to your attention that's kind of different, I always try to point out the newsworthy stuff to you. Newsworthy is, you can see a head coach supplement for lacrosse. For years we've had a lacrosse team and haven't supplemented the coach for that. And so now you can see that money is put on there for that.
Mr. Grosky,
Yes.
remind me, with supplements, is that does the amount stay the same regardless of who fills the position, or is it a percentage of their salary?
It's based on a percentage.
It's based on a percentage of the salary
So
of the person that's filling the
Right,
position.
so there was a study that was done.
So it can fluctuate.
It fluctuates depending on the job and the requirements of the job. So for example, not every supplement is the same. And of course, everybody works hard, right? Everybody believes that they work hard, otherwise you wouldn't be doing the job. But at the same time, a group of folks looked at it and said, okay, how much time commitment is there for each coaching supplement, for each academic supplement, et cetera. And so this is in that category.
Okay, so the percentage can fluctuate, and then obviously an employee that's paid at a higher salary would,
It's based off a base.
oh, it's based off the base salary. Okay,
No, it's off 38, right? It's off
okay,
of
so it's not
38.
based off of their current salary. Okay,
You know? So regardless of who the person is, they'll get the same amount,
okay,
regardless.
okay, that was the question I was asking.
I thought that's where you were going, so I was trying to.
Thank you.
Okay, next, the monthly financial reports for November. Next is the budget amendment report for November. Deletion of certain item reports. It requires us to do that for anything that had a value of $1,000 or more. You can see most of it's broken.
I always go in there hoping for a bargain, you know what I mean? But yeah, they're all broken.
Next, we have key initiative at Keystone Heights, and then the item after that is at Middleburg High School. One of the things we're trying to do is a single key initiative to improve security at our schools, which basically allows the locks to go ahead and the tumblers within the core of the lock to change those if there was a misplaced key. This will add to safety and security of our schools. And you can see that their first item is Keystone Heights High School, and then Middleburg High School, and you'll see more coming as each month happens until we can get them all complete. Next is the pre-qualification of contractors, of which Ms. Clark is a committee member for that. Next, and I will kind of point out, because I was with a certain individual that will remain nameless, it's like, hey, you need to make sure that you do renovate our schools, right? And I'll hear this from folks out in the public, and I don't know if the board's really taken note to the amount of projects that our ops teams put on there. There's a lot of work being done, a lot of good work being done to take care of the maintenance issues on our aging schools. And so I don't know if people just don't get that. It's not like you're gonna blink and you're gonna see everything's brand new. It doesn't work that way. You can't take 40 years worth of stuff and fix it all in 1 year. That's not going to happen. But I just want to give credit where credit's due into the amount of work that's being done. So you can
Do
see
we
ours.
have Mr. Brodsky, I'm sorry, do we have a place where people, I know some counties have a place where people can click on and see everything that's being improved?
Yeah,
Do we have that?
yeah. On our website, when it comes to monies that are spent from the half-cent sales tax,
Is it something all
There's-
the constituents or Clay County knows where to go?
yeah, they should. Now, do they? I don't know. I think sometimes people drive by a school and they see something and then they don't realize either a project's coming, like we're gonna see later on, Middleburg High School's cafeteria is being redone. Some of the projects are not ones that you would easily see, but necessary, like fixing a roof, like at Orange Park Elementary, which is 90 some odd years old. I
Yeah.
don't know what the math is on it. Pretty old building.
Pushing 100.
Yeah.
It's almost 100, there you go. Then you can kind of see that's not like what I'll call a sexy project. If you got a new marquee out front, that's a sexy project. It's glittery and it shines and all that stuff. Fixing a bathroom and fixing a roof is necessary, right? It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it's not like glamorous stuff. Well, the glamorous stuff can't be done until after the bare necessities, are done. So that's kind of one thing that I would kind of point out. If you notice, all of the projects kind of fit in that. It's not like, I know that you represent the entire school district, but you also have your particular districts, right? You're looking at the schools that are within your districts, and there's a lot of work that's being done, but you're not gonna see like new marquees and that kind of work being done. So you see Orange Park Elementary School there. Then the next one are the restrooms at Orange Park Junior High. Again, absolutely necessary. Then next is the restrooms at Lakeside Junior High.
Now, are these like full gut? Are you like gutting the whole thing, pipes and everything?
Yeah.
Because that's a hefty amount. I mean, I know we're in inflation and I get
It
costs
is.
of things and stuff because I'm remodeling my house, so I mean,
Yeah.
I get it. But I'm just like, that's a,
Yeah, they're complete reguts, and then a lot of times, because the schools are older, when we take everything out, we see, oh, there's plumbing issues here, or even structural issues if we look above the ceiling. So they tend to, get pretty expensive, but it's just because of the age and deferred maintenance.
And our requirement to bring everything up to current code.
Code and stuff.
Which was non-existent 100 years ago.
yeah,
Lakeside needs,
yeah. I was
But boy,
curious.
oh boy, when they're done, I mean, using the restroom at Middleburg High for the adults, I was just like, whoa, new
Nice.
restroom.
It's
And
the
you
little
think
things
about
in
it,
life.
it may not be glitzy, but oh boy.
Probably
It
scary.
sure is sure is comfortable. It's a comfortable
I
thing.
understand.
Yeah, because normally you have to push the handle up and set it down sometimes, to get it to go.
There are no more splinters, which
I'm
is
not going
awesome.
into that. I'm not going into that level of specificity. This agenda.
Just saying.
Okay, thank you for
Coming back
sharing.
out of the gullet.
Okay. So, Orange Park Junior High School window replacement.
You probably
Buildings 1, 2, 3, and 4, all of the windows being replaced there. You can see that there's also a change order. The next item is for Orange Park High School's front entrance security enhancement. I want to take the time to invite the board out, and we'll go ahead and we'll send out an events calendar for January, because at the end you're going to see a bunch of meetings, coming up in January, but one of them, very exciting, I'm sure the staff at Orange Park High School is, a ribbon cutting on Wednesday, January 4th, 9 o'clock for their front entrance. And Orange Park High School, every time I go to their front office, I was always amazed at whoever designed that. I'm not sure where they are now, but, it was just a maze where you actually walk through people's offices to get to other people's offices. It was kind of like strange and weird. So that the total, it's beautiful, and you guys are gonna be impressed. That's January 4th. Again, if
That's when we're doing
you
toy
forget,
interviews.
we'll
Yes, it
go
is.
ahead and we'll put out a,
Tell Mr. Gunder I'm coming on Thursday.
we'll put out a calendar for you. Next, we have our Middleburg High School cafeteria expansion. So for those of you that are familiar with Middleburg High School, you know that the area that used to be the courtyard, or it currently is the courtyard out there, will become new serving line, will be fully enclosed in that area, which will create additional space. An estimated additional 600 dining capacity space there. Next is the adopt and update the impact fee and send that to the Board of County Commissioners. If you recall, this was another item that was an agenda item on the 5th. It was a presentation by Mr. Weiss that was here and kind of explained the history of impact fees in Clay County. And basically, the impact fee has not increased in Clay County since 2005. The recommendation was the increase would be $879 is what it would amount to each year moving forward. And again, there will be another impact study once this 4-year cycle is complete. So it's done in a 4-year cycle thing. Also within that, there is an exemption. The exemption is for multifamily projects that are for affordable housing. One of the things that happens within the teaching profession, as well as many of our support employees, the ability to find housing for folks that make less than $40,000 is challenging. There's not very many housing options, so I would call that to your attention also during that. And I would imagine this one will require some discussion from the board, so.
Can I start?
Sure.
Okay. Never, when I wanted to be on the Clay County School Board, did I ever think that I would go through deliberations in my mind all day and all night for 3 weeks. Everything about an impact fee, and by the way, as an English teacher, I think discourse is valuable because most people can understand when you do something, why you do it, makes it better for us to understand why I might make a decision that I make. And in that way, they might disagree with me, but at least we have the foundation of understanding where I'm coming from. Saying that, I've some notes here. My entire life, I have been I just want to say no tax person. I have relatively been pretty firm on the side of fees being gone, being fiscally accountable for everything that we do. And now that I'm on the school board, it's no different to me than a house budget that is a lot more difficult to understand. That takes time. You can't be on a school board for 4 weeks or study for 1 year and have an understanding of how huge of a responsibility a school board budget is. 4 weeks into my tenure, I'm asked to make a very, very difficult decision. Something I never thought I would have to do in that 4 weeks, even as I got older. And I guess I'm probably talking more for myself, the struggle that I've had trying to come to a decision, than I am maybe for other people. But when constituents and people here were raising impact fees. I watched the county commissioner meeting. What people hear is, you want more money. And that's exactly what we're asking for. In my rationalizing, pros and cons, and my husband's a very, very good debater, I had to figure out what was most important to me. I know that no one sitting in this room was here 20 years ago when we could buy portables for $5 it seems like, to resolve our permanent student station problem. I know nobody was here over the last 20 years when these portables still remain, roughly almost 1,000 portables. And when you're thinking about numbers and budgets, there is nothing. There are things I want to look into for a budget. Zero balance budgets by department. Okay, that's going to save maybe some money. I want to look at returns on our investments. What is that return on investment for expensive programs like Achieve? There are things that I want to have serious discussion about, none of which we can use to build a school that costs $56 million. The struggle is real in my heart. Because no matter whom I talk to, it doesn't matter if they're a certified tax attorney, when you are talking about the deficit that they have left us in, not voting on raising impacts fees for 17 years, keeping us at, and we all know, like I just went back in 2005, eggs cost $1.22. This board did not vote on impact fees for 17 years. Stamps were 32 cents, bread were $1.85. If you went shopping right now, you can understand the predicament that we are in, particularly right now when it comes to our finances. We cannot stretch. Do I believe we should look at our budget real hard when I learn about it, when it comes time, have workshops, have discussions to help teach me and to help us make better decisions? I think that can happen. But when I'm searching my heart, I have a friend of mine who said, "What is the deal, Michelle?" And I said, "I have to make this huge decision." And you know what that person said to me? "What's best for children?" What's not best for children is 1,000 portables. What's not best for children, when I was teaching at Lakeside Junior High, my daughter, who's a teacher's room, was right next to the restroom. My room was down the hall across the street. When the floor blew up and we lost everything in our classrooms, they did a great job of putting the cement back on the floor. That's not best for students, it's not best for teachers. You know, fighting mold is not best for teachers. So I just wanted people to know that these kind of decisions are taken very seriously by myself. They are not easy decisions to make. We can reverse any decision we do in 4 years. And even at that, there are statutory limits. Even if we raise it, the maximum allowable fee would be $12,680. We would like to increase from our $7,000 for a single family home to $10,551. Roughly at that point, about $100 a month on a mortgage. My only concern with that is teachers and people who live in Clay County who already can't afford homes. That's a tough spot for me because $100 to a teacher is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. I do not feel bad about people moving from New York to Florida to enjoy our Clay County schools, which are excellent schools. If you've been up north and you visit or have people up north, I don't feel bad about them helping us pay for our new schools. So my biggest concern is affordable housing for people who live here, who currently can't afford a home. Weighs on me that I'm now going to ask them to pay more, and they live here.
Only for new construction.
Yes, new construction home. They pay it only one time, and I understand that. Lastly, I think moving forward for the sake of our students, and I'll say our teachers too, I've taught in portables, we're going to include that. Moving forward, I have to always remember why I ran for this office, and that was to do right by kids And that's really all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Anybody else have anything to add? I do have a card on this item.
Okay.
We can do that now, or we can wait until we get to public
Why don't we do it
comment.
now, because otherwise you're gonna have to wait for about an hour of other stuff. So,
So I have.
And it was questions only, right?
Yes,
It's a
sir.
question.
I have Austin Nichols from the Northeast Florida Builders Association.
Thank you all for allowing me to speak. So I just had a couple quick questions. When do the fees actually go into effect as far as? Because I know it's being phased like.
Yes, so,
1 year.
once we approve it and it goes through resolution through here, it'll have to go to the BCC and be advertised for 90 days before it goes into effect.
Okay. And then to that end, like, so it'll go to the BCC for their next meeting?
It would go to, Lance, you know, it
So-
would go
so-
to February.
Well, that depends on if Courtney and I can get the new ordinance written correctly as it matches the resolution to be able to incorporate the impact fee study and incorporate the recommendations into the ordinance. The impact fees, we passed a resolution, the actual BCC creates the ordinance, it passes through the BCC in their ordinance. So that's kind of dependent on legal in the county, how fast they can get that done. So that's where we sit on that. What we're doing right now is passing the resolution so that we can send our recommendations to the county.
Okay. And you said that'll be a 3-month process once you
Well,
receive it?
once we all agree on the ordinance and the ordinance is written and we all go back and forth, then after the BCC adopts the ordinance, then it'll be a 3-month grace period from that point.
Okay. And then I saw in the study that the board will be phasing in the fees over the next 4 years, and that's still the case as well, right? Okay. Well, thank you guys for answering my question.
thank you for coming and,
Yes, ma'am? Yes.
okay.
I'll comment real quick. I think, Ms. Hanson, I think we all feel the same pain. I don't know why the impact fee was stopped in 2005, because I wasn't here. But we do know as of August 2008, when everything happened, we really didn't recover until about 2014. So I know that's why it wasn't brought back.
Well, my understanding is it was raised in 2005, right? That's the last time the impact, so that was
Yeah, still
in the
is
bubbles,
raised in 2000.
right?
And
When
we
was it
continued,
stopped?
we never stopped the impact.
Right, they just
We
decreased.
continued it,
Yeah.
but we didn't
We didn't
increase
We didn't
it.
increase it.
Right.
We didn't
because of
increase it when given the
Right.
opportunity or the study.
Yeah.
But as you said, the economy at that point in time did not.
Right, so that's
Benefit
why,
us.
you know, it wasn't neglect as much as
Right.
reality. But to your point about teachers, I mean, I've got one right now, and we've been looking for months. And the reality is, new construction is just out. I mean, I've never lived in a new house. That's part of life. And yes, we've got to have the same quality that these other communities, whether it be St. John's, when people come here. And, obviously, I think we all want to get away from the portables and do what we can. So we all feel your pain. So, and I'm in a bad situation. I was at the BCC meeting as well, watching for a little bit. But I'm a member of NEPA. I'm on the school board. I've got to really deal with this as well. So it's a struggle, but we got to get our priorities straight.
So I found it interesting because the county's growing everywhere. Capacity needs individual schools aren't in our area concentrated in a specific area. So there's literally subdivisions going up that affect every single school that we have. In some counties, it's not like that. But even Keystone has new subdivisions coming up for such a very small area. So I realize it's almost an entire county thing, and the money affects everyone moving in, but it also affects the schools their children will be going to, so.
Right. I don't know, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but when we built Discovery Oaks Elementary, we used impact fees to build that school, so we didn't have debt. And when you realize that we didn't build any new schools for 10 years, 10 years. And now there are indeed counties. I talked to somebody at FSBA who was losing students, and I thought, they must be moving to Clay County. Because we're gaining students by, and truly, it is about the students. It's about what we can provide them for this public education. And there's so many, our hands are tied in so many ways. When we were talking last month about, and I can never say the official term for the fees that builders pay if we don't have room for them, and your concern was, that's not enough money. And I'm sitting here going, you're absolutely right. But boy, our hands are tied. And frequently the legislature will go, well, this is a local problem. So what do? You raise taxes, and it's like, we don't want to raise taxes.
Right.
We want help from the state because they see this is a benefit to the state as well. So many, and everything that you said is
I also think with
absolutely
our parents, the budget is such a I'm gonna call it a beast, because I've been looking at it since February with trained people trying to help me better understand. I don't think the average person knows that certain funds have to be used only for certain things. So when we're talking about capital, it is more limited than the public, I think in most cases, or I'm sure there's people way smarter than I am when it comes to budgeting, but when federal law, state law, the monies that they give, we can't just say, hey, next year we're just gonna use this $50 million and build a new school.
That's right.
There's a lot of rules attached to the way we spend money, and I think I'm just talking because I've learned how difficult it is to keep the money separate, your half-cent sales tax, your 1 mil, your impact fees, what comes from the federal government, which is about 7-8%. There's a whole lot of things that go on in there, and part of my misunderstanding of the budget was we have so much money coming in, more than most counties. We have a lot more. However, not all of it can be used for what I say I want to use it on. There's specific rules, and that's a hard thing for people to understand when we're talking about impact fees. If we raise impact fees 5,000 times, we might be able to build a school once every year. It's a giant amount of money, and impact fees are a way to help us make sure that we can keep building the schools in the space that we need, but we actually have to come up with the rest of it. So
That's right.
I also just want to say too that, like Ms. Hanson, you know, I grew up less government, no taxes, no fees, no, you know, leave me alone, let me be, you know, let me run my business. I have several family members in construction, builders, and I am all for growth and development. But I also have 2 babies, and you can't replace those babies. And when I look at it from a mama's perspective, from a parent's perspective, that's why I get so angry and so mad about this portable. And you'll hear for 4 years, you got me for 4 years, you're gonna hear about these flipping portables until 1,000 of them are gone. And we have to come up with a resolution or some way to get rid of them, because we're never going to get rid of them. If you drive through Lake Asbury and you see, that's where I grew up. Every piece of farmland that used to be farmland is no longer farmland. It is house upon house upon house upon house, which is fine. That's great. Come to Florida, enjoy our freedom. But at the same time, we're not just in an infrastructure problem, we're borderline crisis. Like, we have no room for these kids, and for me as a board member, you're not putting another portable for another child or another school. That's not a solution or a fix anymore, because those walls are so thin. It's a safety and security issue, and you can't replace these kids. They're irreplaceable. So I don't know how we're gonna do it. We're gonna figure it out, but these 1,000 portables, they're going.
They're gone.
In 4 years.
They're gone.
Okay, yeah, you're marching orders.
Half $1 billion.
Half a billion.
They're gone.
To do that. Write the check.
They're gone live for us.
We need the mega.
Having taught
Let's go to
in,
DC.
it's interesting, having taught in both, I had a portable when I first started at WE Cherry that was built at Middleburg High. It was phenomenal. It was solid. It was so solid, in fact, that when we opened Argyle Elementary, they literally said, you know what, you don't even have to pack up. Just lay all of the bookshelves down so they don't topple. We're gonna pick up your portable and you get to have your portable at Argyle Elementary. I was thrilled.
No.
I was thrilled because we knew that we were already overcrowding Argyle Elementary when we opened until they built Oakleaf Village Elementary. We had something like 14 buses coming through Argyle, dropping people off. Ms. Kidwell will remember.
Yeah.
We had to add resources that, I don't even remember which resources we had, but we had students constantly, it was like a little ant farm, always coming and going to lunch or resources or whatever. But boy, oh boy, the day that that school opened, they were also talking about building, I misspoke, they were building Oakleaf School, which was going to be a K through 8 school. The junior high was in the solid buildings. The entire elementary part of it was in portables. So the history, I mean, it is an expense, going back to our original topic, it is an expense that is unfortunately a necessary expense for us. And it should be, and we're doing whatever we can now to build schools that don't require portables, so.
And every time you open a new school, I saw that the percent of, it was like 80% per student station or whatever. When you open a new school, you are able to get rid of, and I hope we make our very, very best attempt when you open a new school, if all the schools are at 85%, to bring those, or 70%, to bring them up to get rid of as many portables as feasibly possible. That
Spring
would
Park
be-
will not have one, right?
No,
Neither did Discovery. Discovery was the first one with none.
None,
Discovery Oaks has
Spring
none.
Park will not have.
none.
Does Discovery Oaks have any now?
No.
Nope.
No. Mm-mm.
And I think
Not everybody
honestly,
did,
this
but-
is
So you have to
a
start someplace.
conversation that will spill over into our legislative priorities.
Yeah, it does.
So I think we can continue that conversation momentarily. Anything else to add about impact fees specifically?
So before I go to the next item, I just want to give it 2 cents worth. You know, the issue is a 30 or 40 year issue. Right? I started in '89 and portable classrooms were here then. I don't know when they originated, but that's 33 years ago. And essentially, for many, many, many years, Clay County was 67th out of 67 counties in funding. So the people that were in your seats at that point had to make a decision. We don't have the money to build permanent structure, and whatever the percentage cheaper is to get a portable classroom, they made that decision, and that kept going for a long period of time. Where it changed was where we were able to have a funding stream when we bought, or we built Discovery Oaks. That's kind of like, so put it in perspective, you're not gonna be able to change a 40, 50-year problem in 3 years.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at portables, you're looking at one 8-wing, last time we built an 8-winger, 8-classroom wing, Tynes Elementary School. The cost then,
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
the cost then was $4 million. So let's do a safe assumption of 5. That's
I
a
think it's more like
huge,
a safe assumption of 7 or 8. Everything has doubled.
that's a huge,
Yeah.
huge expense. And certainly, every time that we redistrict, you know, there's other options to talk about. When you redistrict and you rezone people, that's opportunities there. And of course, that's not a very popular thing to say or do, but that is another option that the board has in their tool belt. when it comes to portable reduction and the movement of students to balance them. And so that's what we're attempting to do with Spring Park and option B. So I just kind of point that out.
I think that would be an interesting question for parents on the parent survey. The lesser of two evils, redistricting or portables.
What do you think they're gonna say?
I would like to know.
I
I can promise
I'm
you
not
they're
gonna
gonna deal with portable.
Do we have any idea how much if you did rezone schools and put them more compact, like we're trying to do with Spring Park, how many portables you might be able? Not yet, we don't.
We can certainly look at that. We're obviously going to, if everything goes according to plan, we're going to reduce portables at Patterson Elementary and any other school that we can in the process. Lance?
I just want to reiterate and tell Ms. Hanson that our previous ordinance did not have affordable housing exemption in it. So this new resolution that we're putting in does have a resolution we're putting in to have an exemption for affordable housing in there. So this has never been done before, so we're trying to add that stipulation in there.
And the county commission is also entertaining language for single-family home ownership and the affordable housing. So projects that qualify for that, the special Clay County bonding, it's a limited number of projects, but the county's attempting to address it through single-family home ownership, and this recommendation attempts to assist those that are in the renting market and multifamily developments that would help them have a break to possibly, say, become a homeowner.
Okay.
It's such a limited scope of multifamily development projects. I don't think that the greater good outweighs any type of fiscal impact that this small number of developments might bring. And to Mr. Broski's point, he said it well, you know, the strategy with portables was originally affordability and flexibility. A couple things to keep in mind. It used to be relatively inexpensive when we thought that schools would, there was a time where we thought that neighborhoods would age out and everybody would stay in the same house. So you didn't need a brick and mortar building, right? So they built, if you notice, a lot of our schools have an admin, a cafeteria, or cafetorium, or whatever you want to call them, cafeteria, a gym, and a media center, and they were surrounded with portables for flexibility. It used to be very inexpensive to relocate portables, and it was a strategy that they were forced to deal with due to lack of funding. Not so much the case anymore. I mean, when it used to be, when you could move a portable and set them up in the old days for, $9-10 grand to move a portable and take care of a capacity issue, no problem. That is now complete setup. Can be up to 50 grand to move one portable. It doesn't matter whether you move it 5 miles or 50 miles. With the permits, with the setup, with plumbing, electrical install, with the ramp requirements, with code requirements, it is no longer inexpensive to have that flexibility to move portables around, and they were all there. One last comment, just to support some of what you said. Keep in mind that in leadership, inaction is also action. I mean, we're not, the inaction over years, for whatever reasons that was justified at that time, has put us in really behind the curve. I think everybody recognizes that. But even with the changes that we're making now to try to address new impact and new growth impact, the statute changed, which capped us at 50%. I mean, even with the changes after 4 years, we'll be significantly behind our counterparts in Ms. Clark's point. I mean, as far as the growth fees that are being established in other areas, high growth areas, we're still going to be behind the curve, even with the statutory limitations that are on us. But I commend the conversation. They're courageous conversations, to Ms. Hanson's point. These are things that need to be done to make sure that we're ready for children when they come, and we're ready for them in the right way with permanent space in time.
Okay, so the last item is Clay County Utility Authority Agreement for Spring Park Elementary. This provides an easement for them to do the water. It's pretty standard. And then there's no other items, and that kind of completes the agenda. Any questions on the agenda?
May I go back to C19?
Okay, which one is that?
That's the orange part.
Okay.
I'm gonna be the Grinch that stole Christmas. Just kidding.
Did you say wrench or?
Wrench.
Okay, we need wrench.
I hear wrench.
It's just disheartening that, number one, we get so few people bidding. And obviously, it's government, they overbid. I realize that for employees, they've got to go through major checks, make sure everything's as they should be. But it just bothers me. I mean, we're not talking about all of Orange Park Elementary. We're talking about the building on the other side of the street. We're talking about the classroom section beyond the library. We're talking about the pod area. And we're talking $735,000. I mean, I'd almost like to say, okay, start over, give us some better bids. And I certainly don't want them to come back and say, well, now we've got a cost adjustment, it's going to change. But it also bothers me that Perry Roofing, whether it has anything to do, it's Florida Senator Keith Perry. That's his company. I know that y'all have looked at it, but everything they're doing is wonderful. I know the weatherproofing is the new, sliced bread, it's the best way to go. But some of it may be overkill based on insurance, because insurance rules the world. And it's like Chris Dostie out there putting on a 50-year shingle, but your insurance company is telling you got to replace it in 15 years. So if we can just make sure, and I know you've done it already, but I just had to comment,
So in St. John's.
and we've got it with all our construction. It's not, that's just a prime example.
With one of their new schools, they did very much what you did was, the bids came in and they said, we don't agree to any of that. They sent it back out for bid, wound up paying more for the.
Well, that was probably during and right now, supposedly it has slowed. We know lumber has come back down,
But that, Ms. Clark, that's a perfect example. We're bound, as a school district, we're bound by Florida procurement law. We go through very strict procedures with business affairs and through purchasing procurement, and we follow the law to the statute, to the letter.
Yeah.
It's a frustration because people think, like, for example, the $14, $15 million a year in Edford, they think, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. When one rooftop unit at Orange Park High, HVAC for cafeteria was $2.2 million, or this. When one rooftop, when one correction is $2.2 million over 43 schools, you find out that, to Ms. Hanson's point, you find that you think there's all this money available. I called it MC Hammer money, right? You can't touch it. You can't touch this. There's so much strings attached to the money that, well, people get that. People understand that you can't touch certain funds of money. But to your point, we're using every available dollar to address the critical needs of the deferred maintenance over time, non-sexy projects, and trying to sprinkle in some things that are points of pride. But it is a frustration because throughout the entire pandemic, throughout supply and demand issues, cost of construction has doubled. We have not received one additional capital dollar in revenue from Tallahassee, even though the pandemic is probably the single most critical variable impacting school districts financially. The cost of construction has doubled, and capital funding revenue has remained constant. So it's a challenge, and I appreciate you bringing that point up, because people go, well, how come it's so, why is it the way it is? And supply and demand and labor shortages are creating huge impacts on our ability to do projects.
So I received some feedback from a construction company, and I want to say it was a roofing company. And their complaint was about a portion of our bidding process where they have to attend
Pre-bid?
Mandatory
yes.
pre-bids.
Yes, is that something that we can adjust in order to, because he said that is a huge obstacle and part of why we're not getting as many competitive bids as we could
Well,
be.
one reason we do that is because a lot of times you put these out and they go out on national websites, and then people in Washington State, everybody's bidding. And then you're not gonna get somebody who's gonna give us the customer service that we're used to, or they're not gonna make themselves available to us.
Or understands the scope of work. And see, what we
Right.
try to do, because it's Florida procurement law, and because often it's low bid wins, right? They need to completely understand the scope of work up front. And it's more than just the scope of work written in the specs in the bid that goes out. That mandatory pre-bid clarifies specific scope of work issues that impact that project. That limits change orders that would come to your board. A lot of people can be low bid and then change order,
Right,
change
and
order, change
that's
order.
what's
And we want to
happened in
limit
the
that.
past.
We want to limit that and
I understand the frustration with the change orders, but this particular company was a local company. So I don't know if there's a way that we can make it more accessible.
I mean, they
for-
should be able to send someone out, I mean, if they're interested in the job.
I would
I think
agree
as a
with
partner,
you,
that would be-
except that in this market, they're so high demand. I just think it would be a way, you may sacrifice on the customer service portion of it, but you get it at a lower price, so.
But keep in mind, in every bid, we put opportunities for them, for all that are interested to ask any questions, and any response to the question is provided to all, right? So that's prior to the bid being submitted. So if we put an RFA or RFQ out, yeah, there's a timeline. There may be a mandatory pre-bid meeting, but that doesn't preclude them from asking whatever questions they want to compete with with that. And if that's an issue, I know we've worked in the past with those, but if that's an issue, they should bring it up in the questions before the pre-bid. When they have that
They
opportunity.
could request ahead of time.
Yes.
We could make an arrangement.
Right, thank you.
All right. So next on the agenda is legislative priorities, and then that's followed by a lobbyist discussion, and then strategic plan. So 2 and 3 kind of go together, you know, at least in my mind. So I was asked by a board member, how did we come up with this list? So this list is just a draft, so that you had time to kind of look at it ahead of time, rather than everybody coming in and looking at one another and starting from scratch. It's a document to work off of, you know, in this discussion. It comes from not only senior leadership within the district, but also looking at other groups that also put out their legislative priorities. You know that the legislature goes back March 7th for that. A lot of what they do, that process has already started. We had our meeting, or our public meeting with our legislative delegation. That was yesterday, in which people went, you know, I went to speak on behalf of the district relative to legislative priorities. You can see what the priorities are here. We can certainly add, subtract, whatever it takes to have legislative priorities. Let me first say that, you know, having access to legislators is a big deal, right? Because these are busy folks with a lot of requirements that are put on them, and people tugging at them in different directions. So it might be worth the discussion to kind of talk about what this actually means, because I would bet that some people don't realize what these items are even trying to allude to. And then, of course, people are going to have additional ones. So if I could, just kind of give you a brief overview of what this is. The base student allocation, that's the money that we get per student. So if you look at it, the base student allocation is probably about half of what we actually get per student because of the categorical funding that Ms. Hanson talked about earlier. And so increased requirements and unfunded mandates by the state leave us in a place where the base student allocation is not where it needs to be. That's a pretty standard type of thing. I would argue that every school district in America has that on their legislative priorities. That part's not brain surgery. Maintain the required local effort, restore the LCIF to 2 mil. That's part of what we were talking about before, and having additional revenue sources for construction and our ability to ensure that we're gonna properly fund our school district. You know,
So is that actual capital money?
LCIF is local capital improvement funding.
Okay, that's what I,
Mhm.
So that is local tax dollars, that is not state tax dollars.
okay,
So that is raising your local taxes.
it's raising them?
That is raising your local taxes to 2 mil instead of, like how we have the additional 1 mil now. We used to have another capital improvement millage that was part of our local tax revenue. That was taken away by the state.
Taken
and-
away by the state,
People.
not by us.
Yeah. So then expand funding for voluntary pre-K. I don't know if the board recognizes the fact that we received about half of the funding for pre-K. And I know that I've spoke many times about the importance of early literacy efforts with students. A lot of research that says a student that can't read on grade level by 3rd grade is kind of a pivotal point. Part of that is coming prepared for school to begin with in pre-K programs, and our state does not fund pre-K at the same level that it does for regular K-12 students. It's about half is the cost, even though we're funding a teacher for that, so we have fixed costs involved, which makes expansion of pre-K very difficult.
Is that because they only just go
additional
half a
funding.
day?
Yes,
Yeah. So you want a full day?
it'd be great,
Okay.
full day. Provide the full cost of voucher programs. You know that vouchers and scholarships are very much, the state has brought that forward, and each year, the costs have increased. So to give you an idea, it's now up to $10.3 million in scholarships, where it used to be down around 1.2 million just a couple of years back. It's accelerated in which it's funding private school education for folks. The issue that I have is not a political one, it's an accounting one for the district and making sure that that money becomes a pass-through the district if that's what the legislature wants. So our beef is not, or my beef within Doc's beef, is the pure accounting for this. You can't have a budget where you're not sure what the cost is gonna be. How about telling us ahead of time is kind of what that item's all about, not the political stance on whether or not it's appropriate or not.
So this item in particular it follows the concept that the tax dollars that fund that one student's education follow that student through a voucher or a scholarship to whichever school they choose to attend. So the reason that makes it difficult for the local school district is that you have no idea if a child is going to attend your school or not. You're counting on them being there, so you budget that money, and then you base, or Dr. Legutko bases her estimations on previous years. But in this last year, we saw, did it double, I think?
Tripled.
Tripled.
It was about 2 million, 1.5, 2 million.
Where in previous years it had been like 100,000 or, no, what was it?
Well, no, in the past years, it was about 1.5 to 2 million, because again, we only had McKay scholarships. The last 2 years, the legislative body changed language to where they wanted the Gartner scholarships to be part of the FEFP. What they didn't tell us was the fact that when we projected our FTE, we did not include any of those private school kids because we didn't know. So at the end of the year, when they included the private schools, they utilized our projections and our dollars to pay the private school kids. So we were not allowed to accommodate the differences from the private school to our regular K-12, students.
What was the amount difference? You said two, it
It's
used to be around 2. and
It
now
was
we're
about
at
2 million, it went to 10 million last year.
10.3.
The first year, it went up to, it was an additional, about 800,000, the very first year that we did not plan on. The second
in our
year, which
own
was last
district,
year,
right?
huh?
Right.
In our own district, right?
Oh, yes.
Because they
it's
said
just
that
like-
they were talking about how this voucher and scholarship program, they're not even, like, there's so much money that hasn't even been tapped into.
Right,
statewide
it's
level.
by county, of course, and then,
So that's what I was
So, but
Clay County.
the
impact.
challenge is for us to account and budget for it.
Right,
We
you
we would
need to
like to
know
know.
the number.
In the past, the way that the scholarship worked is a student had to attend Clay County schools and then go to another school. So you had a way or a mechanism of tracking that information. Now a person can apply if it's not even a student within Clay County schools. That makes it very difficult to track that money. While I'm a proponent of school choice, I simply want to be able to budget correctly. You know, and that's part of the challenge, and that's the reason why that one's on there. To go from 1.2 to 10 million, 10.3 in a short amount of time really places a burden on the budgeting process.
So it's almost like a non-reoccurring fee? It's because you can't count on the value of it.
Oh, it's reoccurring.
It's
gonna be
It is recurring, but if you don't know how much, it's not.
Right, it's a roulette game, I
Right.
guess, and it's a, you know, you try to estimate what it could be. The last 2 years, it was very difficult. You know, typically you use trend data and things like that to forecast what you believe it might be. Last 2 years has been very difficult. And really, the accounting, the state even providing us with the data, I think maybe this year we may have some inkling as to what we might expect, you know, but it's always, it was all new for the state and for us, or at least the financial department at DOE, so.
Okay, the next one, enhance, I don't think anybody would disagree.
Can I ask one more question about funding? I'm
Sure,
sorry.
Sure.
In 2020 and in 2021, we specified, where did it go? Basically reinstating PICO funds. And it's a public education capital outlay is what PICO is. And over the years, and we gave it up last year, we didn't ask for it last year, and it may be a moot point, but at some point, we have to impress on the legislature that those funds, the capital outlay funds, are critical for the building and construction because we are tapping out our citizens.
So
And we don't want to continue to ask the citizens to fund, but PICO has to be some variation thereof.
So I think, to your point, that could fall, I'd like to add another heading that says maybe safety and security or growth and development, whichever would be more eye-catching for our legislators. But I think they need to understand the critical nature that we are in uniquely as a school district in the state of Florida with the number of portables that we have. And along with the rest of the state, we have these astronomical increases to capital improvements as far as not only what it costs to build, but how much we're having to build. That's not a unique problem to Clay County. What is unique to Clay County is the existing issues that we have with portables and deferred maintenance. So I think, I don't know that PICO would be the way to go because that would be something that would be statewide.
I feel like we're beating a dead horse.
Right. So, but I do think that we need contribution from the state in order to rapidly address the rapid growth that we're experiencing and the new nature of school safety and security. I mean, that is definitely, portables were not seen as a security risk when they were implemented.
Correct.
That was a different day and age in school safety and security. So I think that definitely needs to be part of our, remember what we talked about before, I think we need to have some items that we are in agreement with the rest of the school districts across the state, but we need those particular unique needs that we have here in Clay County, and I think that I can't imagine our legislators not being sympathetic to safety and security for children in Clay County and helping us to address that need through their funding. So I think that's, I tend to lean towards putting a safety and security heading for the portable reduction.
So
Would you
like
have 1,000 portables?
What I'm
Would you
hearing,
want that before funding, or would you want
Emphasize
that?
it.
I think
Number
that
one
is
in the
number
state.
I think that would be the
I think
number
that's
one.
top of the list.
Truly, yeah.
Yes.
I agree with that.
So we can go ahead and add an item here that deals with safety and security and.
Above the funding as a whole heading.
And portable
I thought we were doing this.
reduction, we can certainly
Do it, and
do
then we were
that.
gonna go back to and add what we wanted. But you have to put, look, we're number one in the state at 1,000 portable.
I think we're 3.
Oh,
No,
we are
are we
number
number
one. I
No, we're
actually
number
know
one.
this, it was,
If you were third.
We are number
we're
one.
number one in our size, but there are 2
Would you-
bigger counties that have.
I will get
more,
you
but
a
they're
ribbon.
Giant counties.
You are number one. You are number one.
We have one in Orange.
You can wear that hat.
Morning
You need to give them.
Okay, so
Miss-
we can certainly deal with
Yes.
that. So now we're down in workforce.
No, hold on, I have a question. I didn't know we were
Sure.
doing this as we went. I thought we were waiting till the end to do it all. I have a question.
Sure.
So this maintain required local efforts and restore, that is to increase our taxes? Is that what you were saying?
That would increase your
Yes.
local taxes, yes, it would.
I'm not in favor of that.
It was.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to get rid of
Mill though.
May I say
Doc?
something? Okay. Maintaining the required local effort, exactly what it states, required local effort is, it is the amount or the millage that is required in order for us to participate in the FEFP, the funds, the state funding. So with that, what
Which is
that.
at one, right? Already.
Excuse me?
Is that one right now? Right?
No.
What is that?
Different millage. What is the required local effort right now? 1 point,
It is about, oh my goodness, it is about,
Is it
changes
because
yearly.
it changes
Yeah.
every year
Yeah.
based on the needs of the district, the specific county. So for the required local, and that is the trim process that we go through every year. There is a calendar of events that happen from July 1 to set the, and it sets the timeline to set our budget. So, and the state tells us really how much they require each county to set their required local effort at in order for them to generate X amount of dollars from state funding.
So I think
So-
maintaining the required local effort would not, it may increase the amount of funding that you get from your local tax base, but restoring the LCIF 2 mill, that would
Right.
increase access, because that is a non-existent
Right, we're still,
millage right
in
now.
the past, several years ago, we had, we were able to levy about 2 mills, which is specific for capital improvements and those types of activities. The legislature, I guess, really reduced that to 1.5 mils. So right now, when we do take trim, or when we go through the trim process, part of the overall millage includes required local effort for local operations, and then there is the construction, the capital side, which is 1.5 mil.
Right.
What we're asking is, can we revert that back to the 2 mil that we got many years, I can't remember the dates, I wasn't prepared for that,
in
but
2008.
yeah,
I mean, it was in
where
that area.
it was at 2
Yeah.
mil, where we were receiving funds to cover construction and maintenance of our facilities.
So that's on top of,
So-
our citizens have been very, very gracious with our 1% referendum and our half-cent
Right.
sales tax.
Right,
So it would be an increase of the local
would be the
effort
half
from
of it.
1.5 to 2 million, which is a tax increase on our.
correct, yes.
So I think it's about 8 million. if it's
But in
half.
order, right, but in order to do that, the legislature directs that, not us.
And then I have one more question. How much from our budget, I was trying to look at that. How much does the district actually get from charter schools, from the FTEs? From
Okay, so
administration
each charter is different.
Mhm.
Oh, you mean, excuse me,
Like do
The
we,
FTE goes to the charter school.
yeah.
the whole, we don't
Versus
get
pass
fees
through.
No, there is
at all?
there is
There's
a
a
percentage,
fee.
there's a
Admin
small
fee.
percentage that we
Okay.
do maintain. If the charter school is an A+ school, I believe it is 3% administrative fee on
Okay.
their revenue.
3%.
That's about less than $100,000, depending on the size of the charter.
Okay.
But everything else, including FEFP and categoricals and TSI, all of the funding, they get a proportionate share of those dollars.
Okay.
based on.
But everything except for the 3% goes to them,
Yes.
Correct.
everything, okay.
Because it's FTE driven, it's student driven,
Yeah.
number of kids generates the proration that goes to them.
They
Okay.
get a portion of Ed First and
Yeah, often.
millage, yeah.
Yeah, they do, yes, they do that.
They do get a portion of the
Proportion
millage
to
too?
share,
Okay,
based on FTE.
that's what I
They
wanted.
get a portion of the millage, they get a portion of the half cent sales tax.
Okay.
And they receive the FTE that
Any
they
grant?
generate.
Any grant?
And,
Grant, okay,
and federal funding if they choose to participate in the funds.
okay. It all went with my stuff.
Okay. So then we're down to enhanced funding and resource to recruit, develop, and retain highly qualified teachers. You know, we need all the help we can get in that area. The next one, provide financial support during the student teaching process to prepare and recruit students into the teaching profession. One of the ideas they came up with, and I'm proud to say that we now partner with UNF for a grant called Project Prep, and we met with their leadership team the other day. And one of the things is you not only have to encourage people to become teachers in high school, right, through our CTE programs for to become a teacher, but also when you get to college. And one way to do that is paid internships. So kind of exciting, like I guess hot off the presses, I guess I can say it. I was in a meeting in which it was said, so I guess it's true, right? Is paying people to do their internship, to keep people in the teaching profession. And then looking at teaching as a 3-year induction program of providing support for teachers, not only during the pre-teaching piece of it, but actually the first 3 years of teaching, right? As part of the retention piece of that. So those are important items that I don't think anybody would be in disagreement with across the state. Provide additional resources and paid training opportunities for educators who work with students or individuals with disabilities. This is a real challenge. We got 11,000 ESE students within Clay County, a very high percentage in relation to the rest of the state, and finding educators who have the servant's heart and the gift that it takes in order to be involved in some of our more difficult programs, is a real challenge. We talked about the next one last year, which was CTE teachers. A lot of times they're in a field where they can make a lot more money out in the quote world than they can as a CTE teacher within the school system, and how to fund that better, because we just can't attract certain folks to come into teaching. The next item there.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Can we go back real quick to the paid training financial resources for educators with teaching ESE? I've done a lot of research on this, and it's something maybe we can talk about later. When we're talking about additional financial resources, a lot of counties, and I'm not saying I'm just gonna tell you what my research said, basically. A lot of counties, and as an ESE teacher, my entire career, use a stipend to attract master teachers and retrain master teachers with the kids that are most difficult to teach. Is that something that we've ever used to encourage our best teachers, a stipend to remain or come back to or teach our most
So maybe,
vulnerable?
Yeah, maybe what we don't do is advertise properly, but there is an 8% stipend
Only on some though.
that goes with. There's a huge listing of titles. I think inclusion might be the only one that's not listed within there. But all of these self-contained are listed within there.
But I never got one. I did it for a lot of years. I'm just saying maybe it's something we can entertain at some point.
Yeah, I think we have to look for ways to attract people.
It kind of is a sore spot for me that a lot of times brand new teachers are thrown in with the kids who are most difficult to teach, even after 20 years of teaching them. It's a very difficult, and it is the area that can take us from 10th in the state to 1st. We have an opportunity if we could get master teachers and retain them with the most challenging kids.
So I think when you look at compensation proposals for a variety of different positions, one of the challenges is that people often take a position, then they'll transfer out of the position for a position that they believe is easier than the one that they were in. I think that's basic human nature, right? My son once told me to find a job where they pay more and he works less. And I said to him, well, that's great, David, but 8 billion people are looking for the same job as you, so good luck with that one, right? So it's just the way that it works. So I particularly would like to see something done with Title I schools in addition to, this is more than just an ESE problem, and it requires more financial commitment in order to make that happen. But it's really a contractual issue that we deal with when we go to negotiations. That's the mechanism by which that would be done, what you're talking about. Okay, so then the larger paragraph talks about additional funding for student services, such as hiring additional school counselors, licensed mental health, social workers, et cetera. We have 86 school counselors, 17 social workers, 17 licensed mental health clinicians in the entire district. It's an area of increased need. I will tell you, I have a superintendent student advisory council, which is a group of about 20 students from across the whole county, with every school represented, every secondary school represented. It was their number one issue to talk about. And so I think that just growing up myself in a very strict family of 10, those types of things weren't talked about. This wasn't, it was not. But now in today's day and age, it is more prevalent than it's ever been before. The last item is the teacher salary increase allocation, and this is one where I talked specifically to our legislative delegation yesterday, and it has to do with the flexibility to the law. We appreciate the fact that the state has attempted to elevate the teaching position by increasing the starting salary. Clay County's now up to $48,250.
Yes, they are.
Which is, I started 18.3.
That was back with the dinosaurs.
And I think we had spaghetti one night, and then we have hot dogs and beans one night, and but over time, right? When you look at it, was 38 for a long period of time, and then in 2 years we went to 48 like that. That's because we had financial help from the state in order to do that. One of the challenges is when you do that, you kind of leave the people behind that are in the middle, right? So what we asked for specifically was flexibility in the funding to allow us to compensate our more veteran teachers relative to that, because it's kind of hard if you've been around 15, 16, 17 years and a new person comes out and they get paid virtually what you're getting paid. That becomes a real challenge to motivate staff to do that. One of the things that they did was they also said, though, if you added money to them, you had to also increase the beginning teacher salary, which is why you see this go from $47,500 to $48,250, because the law required us to do that, right? So the basic ask is, how about taking the strings off of it so that we can compensate our employees, properly?
I don't know if a lot of people, I've talked to school board members that actually don't quite understand the extent of what you're talking about. So I was nearing 20 years in Clay County. I have 2 master's degrees and never made $50,000. I just didn't. Maybe the year I left I would have, all right? So what we're talking about is a group of master veteran teachers that could have worked 17, 18 years, and we're making less than the first year teachers, which we brought up to the first year teacher salary and did the best we could to compensate our veteran teachers. It is something that needs to, like the wording, increase funding for the teacher salary increase allocation should specifically mention the complications it's like they blindsided us and did not understand what it meant when they were trying to help us recruit teachers. Our veteran teachers are key. It is absolutely key, and I don't have the exact numbers in Clay County, but the retirements and resignations happening across the country right now because of this salary, I would just basically say an equitable salary, and a salary that is, you have to remember, we talk about the price of schools going up double, and our new teachers are making the same money pretty much as our veteran teachers. That's a real problem. And I feel like the language in this should be increasing funding for veteran teachers, because our new teachers at $48,250 is as much as I was making.
So here's what I've gotten two things from you
Yeah.
so far in the conversation. One is a new item dealing with safety, security, portable reduction. We'll wordsmith it. We'll put it back out to get at some point here in the near future. And then reworking the last item to focus more on the veteran teachers. And I would probably make the argument that one of the things we need to do is just simply take the rules off of that, which are related to how the law specifies the money has to be spent to allow us to spend it on the veteran teachers, which we're not able to do now.
Well, I would say take the law off, and then also, I wouldn't say back pay, but do something for veteran teachers. Because they've sat out for the last 2 years with nothing. You've got 30-year teachers.
It's not.
Well, not nothing, but you know.
They feel like
it feels
we
like
did-
nothing. I should
squeezing
be
oranges to get
better
that.
on my verbiage, but,
Okay.
I mean, they've gotten stuff, but they feel like they've gotten nothing. Like, you know, they feel like they've
Well, I think a
non-existent.
easy way to help the legislation understand the pickle that we're in is if you look at the increase to minimum wage, you're seeing that same situation
We have the same
across.
thing on the support side.
Correct,
Yeah.
because you've collapsed the salary schedule. So I think, helping them, very conservative group of legislators, so I would think that they would understand the problem that's been created by increasing our minimum salary, our minimum wage, and not increasing our
Or
top
just giving
scale
us the
salaries.
freedom to.
The other side of that, though, is also maintaining. It's critical that all of these increases that the governor and the state has implemented in our situation basically told us, you must. We have to have that money maintained. We have to continue getting that salary. Because if not, then we have to go back to the drawing boards and say, okay, how are we going to now pay for this particular expense that was created by someone outside of our county?
Right.
Mr. Brodsky, can I give a real easy explanation of how the new law and what y'all are saying that to take the strings off?
Right.
They changed it again this past year because we were very excited and we got the board to say, yes, let's go ahead and let's jump to that 48 that was, or 47.5 that was required. Then this year they changed it. So now anytime we raise a professional service contract teacher who are veteran teachers, if I give them $1,000 raise, the new law says I have to increase the base by 75% of that, which is $750. So for every 1,000 I give a veteran teacher under this current law, we have to raise the base by 750. Well, you can't continue to raise that base by 750, the expense of it. And so it's kind of like our hands are tied. And we worked with, Ms. Kidwell can tell you, we got together in subcommittees this year to try to figure out a way to find a loophole. There was none this year. Before there was a loophole and they found it and they closed that on us. So it is very difficult to award that. Part of what they're wanting to do is, if we didn't have any professional service contract teachers, we could spend that money how we wanted. So that is kind of like what we believe is the underlying goal. But right now, if we give a teacher who has a professional service contract 1,000, that means next year, we have to raise that base to, instead of 48.25, we're gonna be at 49. So then there goes your compression again. It just keeps compressing and compressing. We were able to decompress it this year a little tiny bit, not much, $50. That $50 equated to several million dollars to decompress it.
Ms. Troutman, how many teachers do we have on the PSC?
We're about, it's getting fewer, but we still have at least 40%, if
Yeah,
not
60,
more.
40.
At
Yeah.
least 40%, wow.
Correct.
And what's I'm asking you for things you were not prepared to answer. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
Off the top of your head, do you know like the average number of years that a PSC teacher has served?
It's anybody after that was here before 11.
Anybody, okay, so 2011 is when they got rid of the PSC contract. So that's fairly recent. It'll be a long
Yes.
time before that goes away.
Correct.
Yeah. So is there an opportunity for, which I know they would never elect to do this, but if they elected to move from PSC contracts to annual contracts, would that then fix the salary schedule?
That is an option that teachers have. They can, and that's all tied to that performance pay.
Right.
Okay, because a professional service contract teacher technically does not get performance pay. Whereas your annual contract teachers get performance pay and there's percentages on that.
And
So,
if I might, you probably know because you've been in the district, but Ms. Skipper, the professional services contract is kind of that idea of a tenured teacher. And that's why they're so hesitant to give up that contract.
Correct.
There's a lot of guarantees.
I know that
in
you
that
can
contract.
volunteer to give up your PCS contract. And at one point, I think there was a salary increase of $50. You get a little bit more money if you let it go.
that was true, and they changed the percentage on that, because
They did.
before it wasn't even quite that. So now there has to be,
So now the
so
state
your
is
PCS
trying
teachers.
to incentivize teachers
Yes.
to move away from that, to elect to give up their
Well, it's-
PSC
yeah.
contract and go to an annual contract. The annual contract is just what it says, it's an annual contract. You don't have any guarantees beyond
This year.
that date. So that's why they feel much more secure with that PSC contract because it's a continuing contract. There's not an end date stamped on it.
I mean, I would like to personally know why PCS teachers hold on so strongly to that. It might be a different way about it, to find out why it's so important to them to keep it. I mean, I don't think we have any information about.
I
Oh,
can
I
tell
can
you
tell
what
you.
personally.
I was going to say, I mean, the obvious. Looking in, I can tell you. It's the obvious, yes.
Yes. It's the obvious.
I mean.
So there would have to be a tremendous financial incentive
Right.
for PSC versus annual to
Right.
get them to make that leap.
Yes.
So that we've never had the money
Right.
or desire to do that, so.
When
So-
that annual contract first started, it was painful
Yes.
for a lot of teachers who came in. new
Pros and
teachers.
cons to everything.
Oh, yeah.
So one other item I think we need to wordsmith and try to figure out how to add is, and I guess it would be a new revenue stream. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, there's not a particular revenue stream for capital outlay that comes from the state, correct? That was PICO and it's gone away, so we don't have a revenue stream for capital outlay.
We rely on local dollars.
It is dependent on local dollars. So, Ms. Skipper, I know you had a problem with the item that says maintain the required local effort and restore the LCIF to 2 mil. So what if we strike restore the LCIF to 2 mil and instead have some language about additional funding from the state to make up for the lack of LCIF money that we currently have?
I agree with that.
Yes,
The
I agree.
the restored, the 2 mil, by the way, has also been on for the last 4 years.
Right, and they've never done anything about it. So it's kind of like
It's sort of like the people
beating a dead
funds.
horse. How about
We
we ask
stick
for
it out
something
there, we say
different?
maybe, but it's not happening.
Because I think, this year particularly, now that COVID has settled down in the state of Florida, we're seeing this influx of new residents across the state. So I think that there is there's a real opportunity here to ask for some revenue that addresses a very unique problem in this particular year, where we can talk about how the incredible inflation we've seen in the construction market has made it unbearable to try to accommodate the new growth that's coming in.
Unbearable insecurity.
Well, and I think that's why I keep bringing up the lobbyist or the grant writer, so that our local citizens aren't having to pay, and that we can go to the state I've met with Sam Garrison about this, and we've talked about it.
Right.
To me, that's what it's, in a sense,
Yeah,
taking
so-
the place of.
So grant writing in Clay County is done by the individuals that know the most information about the grant. For example, there's a school hardening grant that right now is being written by the team. In order to do that, I know that we do a pretty good job of writing and finding additional resources to help with that. We'll go ahead and we'll ask for additional capital outlay funding and see where that goes. Because the issue is one that's simply going to require tremendous amounts of funding in order to deal with.
I think we should use your word, Mr. Roberts. I think we need capital outlay
Unprecedented.
funding to address the unprecedented growth that we are experiencing in the state of Florida.
I will use
I
the word
know
word.
you don't want to
Yes.
admit it, but you're number one in portable, so you have to say that.
I thought we were that.
I mean, you really have to say that.
Yeah.
I think you have to say that.
So maybe we won't
know
do
you don't
that
want
till
to.
after we open up Spring Park. maybe
I
I'll
don't like
take this
being
off
number
the-
one in something. I would
I mean,
say
if you need
something
me
the
to say
effect
it,
of,
I will say it. But I don't want to say it, but I will say it to get the job done, you know what I mean? We have to say it
I
really
would,
loud. Just kidding.
is there any other discussion on this? So why don't we do this, because we have time. Like we're actually in good shape time-wise. The legislative session starts March 7th. Clay Day, so I feel like we've gotten into this topic early enough. Let us wordsmith this, what we talked about today, and put it back out to you. And there'll be another discussion at some point, either at a workshop or board meeting relative to this.
I have one
Sure.
more question. I'm tempted with our portable reduction funding ask to almost have a proposal for the
We're
state,
gonna-
to say this is what it would cost for us to get to where we need to be. This is our current situation, this is great, but I think they need, kind of like what we did before when we asked for
think-
funding for
I think that's a great
the performing
segue to the next topic,
Yeah.
which is one of the things that several board members brought to my attention, which was the use of a lobbyist in order to get some of these items done. Now, we've had lobbyists in the past. The Board of County Commissioners have had lobbyists for a very long period of time relative to that issue. I've met with our current legislative delegation, also met with our previous legislative delegation, relative to the issue. And one of the challenges is that even when you look at legislative priorities, the work of converting the theme or the mission to the actual legislation and the words that matter to those legislators, the people that ultimately make the decision, is a skill. It's a skill that requires people who have influence, let's face it, who have influence in order to make those things happen. And so the retaining of a lobbyist is something that board members have brought forward. And while it's within my signing authority to do it, I think it's important to have the collaboration with the board and have that discussion for that. One of the challenges and one of the things when superintendents meet is we talk about the law, because what happens for the legislature, and really if you watch the legislative meeting yesterday that I spoke at, and you watch the whole thing, you would see those three people got peppered with everybody from wanting additional funding for the Keystone Lakes, to the river keepers, to the free clinics, to when you talk about a legislator and the responsibility, it's not just education, right? We're in this business, right? We're passionate about what we do. There's people tugging from every direction at these folks. So having an expert that could bring forth the language that will make those things happen, right? So when you're looking at some of the big ticket items, like if you're looking at an item that is about like a 1 million appropriation, that doesn't move the needle, right, for a legislator in a billions in a budget, right? But when you ask for 500 million, that'll be a big ask and very challenging for legislators that are torn in so many realms to abide by or comply with that ask, right? So having somebody that's there that can do that. So I just kind of throw it out there. I got my own thoughts on it, but would like to hear board members on that topic, and that's number 3 on our list.
I couldn't agree more. I truly think that we are at the stage now where we have a specific ask. We've talked about this in the past, that if we have a specific ask, that's when we bring in the lobbyists.
Have we thought about, I don't want to say aligning with other groups, but I'm going to be on the committee for the FSBA advocacy. Probably my favorite committee I've ever been assigned, thank you. They have similar, have we ever thought about like combining forces with people like?
We have, and so let's hear from everybody first, so I don't spoil anything, but yes, we have thought about combining forces.
Ms. Clark, did you have anything you wanted to add? What's your feeling on the lobbyists?
Well, I think there's only 98 registered lobbyists in the state of Florida, so we're not talking about a great deal to choose from, but it's like any other person we take to council. We're gonna have to do our homework and get somebody that is really respected by the legislators that will get what is needed. But I mean, we're in a very unique situation compared to the rest of the state. We've got much lower income. We have a lot of retired military, many disabled, and yet we've got some historic buildings. Older. I'm a little historic myself, getting there. But I think we have a lot of opportunities between, our older schools that need help, the growth that's coming to this county very fast, and the increase of cost of construction. I mean, we've got 4 big important things that other counties aren't having to deal with. So I think it's just key that we find a lobbyist that is, and I don't care how much they make, as long as they bring us 1,000 times more. So,
Such an easy task.
and there are some very good ones out there. So I just think it's gonna take time to do our homework.
It's worth the investment.
Time is of the essence, so we are in a crunch. We've got to get it, I think, done swiftly in order to make the most of the time we have before they start making their decisions.
Yes, yes.
Ms. Skipper, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just want to say, I know, Mr. Brodsky, you had mentioned something about an internal hire at one point. I think if we are going to do it, we need to do it right and actually hire an actual lobbyist that has a relationship with our legislators, with Tallahassee, who knows what they're doing, who knows the ins and outs of their job, who can actually bring us $1, because there are going to be, deals made, and I don't want it to be bad deals or what we think is a good deal and it's really not a good deal, or whatever. And like Ms. Clark says, as long as they're bringing us a large amount of money, we'll pay them, and that they have a good relationship with our legislators.
That's the key.
I think I look at this position much like we looked at the Education Foundation when we brought that position on and took care of that salary as a board. The return on investment was exponential. So I think as long as the position more than pays for itself.
Right.
And I'm in the same vein as much as I'd like to have somebody internal who's accessible to us locally, really the job is in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me tell you what I've done so far. Okay, gone ahead and met with legislators and simply asked, who do you recommend? For that. We looked at internal candidates. candidates, and actually St. Johns County, our closest neighbor, has an internal candidate. We don't believe that we have somebody internally that can be up to speed very quickly, because right now, the legislature's meeting right now. Like, this is like a today kind of thing. I've talked to various lobbying firms related to this, and one of the partners that I would like to partner up with is the Board of County Commissioners that just recently hired a lobbying firm. It would make sense, in my opinion, to do that and move forward with the same group that they're using relative to their efforts. Our efforts are a little different. I also think that would make smart business move, and even though it's within my authority to sign this and not even bring it to you, it would be beneficial if we hired them for a 6-month term. So the terms of the agreement would be the same as the terms what the Board of County Commissioners is paying for the lobbyist, which is $6,000 a month. So it would be a six-month, $6,000 contract. And the idea would be we can evaluate where we are at that point, and, because that makes smart business sense. The challenge in meeting with lobbyists is they actually like those projects. And one of them told me, in fact, the Southern group is the one that the Board of County Commissioners went with, and the one that I'm recommending, is that they like when they get one of those projects, because for them, one of the challenges is in communication with y'all and say, okay, here's what I've done. Sometimes it's difficult to get that tangible, that's what they did. Like, for example, let's say that we had a drainage issue at Orange Park Junior High, which we do. And say a lobbyist is able to help us with that, but not in a traditional education appropriation, perhaps in a transportation appropriation, right? You gotta think out of the box, and could provide the funding to make that happen in a different way that's non-traditional. It's very difficult to kind of put the return on investment dollar. So they love when they have like a simple project, and 900 Portals is not a simple project, right? But they have a project in which they can, put a stamp on the wall and say, look what I did for you, right? So now the question would be, that's a huge task for the group to do, because while we want to think that we're unique when it comes to growth, portable reduction, and all of that, they would hear the same thing from just about everywhere. Right? It's just the reality. I mean, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer here today.
Sounded like it to me.
Sorry. I just try to be realistic, and having been around those kinds of folks and our legislators, it's just, they get tugged in so many directions. What makes you special, right? It's kind of like, is it challenging, which is why you would want people who have relationships with people who can then bring the issue forward. Because as much as we don't want to admit it, sometimes relationships matter, right? And that's what we're talking about here. So I think I got direction, from you, and that's the way we'll proceed with that, if everyone's good with that.
Real
To
quick.
me, it's not much of it's very little risk.
Are they gonna have time if they're working for the BCC?
They will, they'll choose 2 separate people, and this is, their firm
So it's a firm.
is out of, their firm is out of Tallahassee itself.
Okay.
And Southern
Very well
Strategies
known.
has worked for the Clay County School Board before.
Yes,
Southern
yeah.
Strategies is different, I find the history of this, it's different. Those folks no longer work for what's now called the Southern Group.
Oh, those are different groups, okay.
Different, yeah. I think that Southern Strategies and Southern Group, they kind of parted ways, is a different business model.
Okay.
So, very much so, very, very influential lobbying group within Tallahassee.
So we're going with Southern
Group.
Group. Thank
Southern
you.
Group.
Southern Group, getting the name right.
Okay, so Now I got one last topic, which is our strategic plan. I just want to give you an update, tell you where we're at with that, tell you where we're going. Bonnie, through the magic of technology, is going to put some stuff up there for you. We have a presentation for you. We have some survey results. We have some future direction related to this. This is kind of exciting stuff. Beats portable reduction, 10-1. As we talk about future direction. So Bonnie, if you go to the presentation first, and you have a copy of all of this stuff in front of you. So I'm just going to kind of go through the presentation. We're going to talk, on to the next one, Bonnie. We're going to talk a little bit about strategic plans in general, the strategic planning process. We're going to talk about our survey that we gave out to our community, talk about goals for the 23 to 28 strategic plan, and our town hall meetings that we've scheduled for that. So when you talk about strategic plans, you're talking about working with stakeholders and defining a shared vision for the future and creating a plan to achieve, that vision. So it's high level, lofty. Every school district has a strategic plan. So if you want to go to a different district, see what their plan is, you can do that. Goals, traditionally there's a schema that goes with them. So typically there's goals, which are big general statements about vision, and then there's strategies, and then there's initiatives. So going back to the plan that we're under now, that expires this summer. The next one, Bonnie. It looks like that. That should look familiar. If you go onto our website, you looked under our strategic plan, that's just goal 1 for our strategic plan. And the title or the goal was develop great educators and leaders. And then underneath it, you can see there's a bunch of strategies and initiatives that go with the idea of developing great educators and leaders. Okay, next, Bonnie. Our current strategic plan has 5 goals. You can see the wording that's up there. Sometimes we make things more difficult than it really is. For example, I don't think there's a strategic plan in any school district in America in which recruit, retain of employees isn't part of that. That's like the biggest no-brainer when it comes to what we do. So you can see that there are perennial ones that would be goals, even in a future strategic plan. So those are the 5 that we came up with back 5 years ago. On to the next one. So let's talk about the strategic planning process. So leaders met, prior to the November 15th survey. We started talking about a strategic plan, and we looked at the plan that we currently had and kind of figured out where we were on each item. And then we went through the whole process of surveying our stakeholders. We've also got together to form 5 goals, broad goals. I'm also going to call to your attention in January, and we'll give you the dates on the last slide, and we'll send it out to you. More stakeholder input in January. We've got 3 community meetings planned. Then there's a steering committee process and a process for the board. This would be a great opportunity for the board. I know in speaking to the chair, for board members to go ahead if they had a particular initiative or something that they wanted to contribute. I think it was an awesome idea, especially when board members, have a particular interest in mind. This becomes part of the process, and we can kind of fold it on in, with that. And so we're looking to do that February, May-ish timeframe. We have leaders in charge of each one of those groups and those committees that are working towards that. We're in the very infancy stage of that. And then the goal is by June, we'd have a new strategic plan. Strategic plans are not this like document that you can't change ever, right? So keep in mind, things change, along the way, but the process by which people go through to kind of evaluate what initiatives and what strategies they're going to use is important. So part of the process is we gave a survey out to our respondents. I put a copy of the complete survey at your seat. And you can see, we gave the survey out. You can just see from the pretty colors up there, looks like all areas of our county were represented within the survey. You can see from the next slide, Bonnie, you can see we had parents, we had students, we had people that work in the system, former employees, we had all kinds of folks that responded to the survey. And the survey questions itself were kind of long. So Bonnie, if you go to the survey, let's see if you can toggle. The survey you have in front of you is the document that looks like this. Looks like the colored graph, okay, that you have, the piece of paper. It might be easier to see it on paper, which is why we gave that to you. If you kind of look through it, there's major topics. We're looking at vision and mission, so scroll down, Bonnie. You can see the results there, in which people put strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree, or, hey, I don't have enough information, I can't make a decision. Then you can see communication is another piece of it. You can see it's kind of an extensive survey and what percentage of respondents answered for each one. Then you can see there's teaching and learning, very specific types of items related to the rigorous and relevant curriculum. All of that is in there. Then you can see student services that we provide students, staff recruitment and development, and then at the operations. And then at the end, the last has to do with district priorities. What do you think is important for us to focus on? And you can see the results that people have relative to priorities. So what we did was, we took a look at all of those, and we analyzed, of course, the results of the data, and used that in the guiding of us forming the 5 goals that we're going to unveil here in a second. But I would like to go back to the other, Bonnie, and kind of point out some things that kind of stuck out to me. 87% of respondents believe the district's heading in the right direction. I don't know if you know anything about polling or surveying. 60-40 is killing it. Like, you're doing super well. 87% of people that responded said the district's heading in the right direction. So remember that, sometimes as board members, like, and even as superintendent, right? People aren't calling up to say, Mr. Brosnan, you're doing an awesome job. Keep up the good work. Now, I'm going to expect each one of you to do that. No. But it's human nature that they're going to reach out to you when they have a problem. Their bus didn't show up on time, this happened, that happened. They reach out to you. Always important in leadership, take a step back from what's directly in front of you, because it increases your vision of what's really happening. So that's one of those that I kind of look at that data point and I think to myself, let's take a look at the bigger picture. Now, let me also say this. Improvement is mandatory. It's not optional. We should be working and striving to improve. No doubt about it. And we should have a growth mindset about that. But at the end of the day, this isn't just a good district, it's a great district. Now, there's things we need to work on, obviously. But the state of Florida, our parents, our community, all said that. So this just isn't me telling you. This is what everybody else said, not me. You've heard me say it many times, and we'll continue to say it. So that's a big data point for me. When I looked through here, I said, oh, that's a biggie. That's a highlighted one for me.
How is this pushed out?
We pushed it out through social media, email.
So was it from the district or the individual schools?
From the district.
And then we have 2 news stories on it as well.
Right?
And 2
News stories covered it.
2 news stories covered it too. So we try to gather, as much information as we can.
What's particularly impressive, because I love data, is that 1,505 parent and guardians of school kids
Yes.
is by far the biggest stakeholder on this survey.
Yep.
And they're the ones that gave us that rating.
That's right.
So, just to be transparent and honest, when you have 40,000 people, there's something that happens every day. My phone starts at 6 in the morning. So, but you got to remember something. if you look at it as a percent, we should provide good customer service for everybody
Yes.
that has a challenge, and we will. But you gotta take a step back from that and kind of look at the big picture, which is part of the strategic planning process, okay? 93% of respondents think we hold high standards for all students. I found that to be invigorating. 82% of respondents believe the district provides a safe and orderly environment. Now, do we have events that happen? Yes. You saw the event in Green Cove. I sent the email and I called a couple of you, along the way here with that, and I try to, be as quick as I can, but, I can't beat a child with a cell phone. I'm not that fast. I can't, right? So now information happens so fast. I can promise you on things that are big items, I do a pretty good job of communicating out. I don't bother you with the normal day-to-day stuff that happens, but that was one that was big, and it takes me to get to a computer. So sometimes other people are texting, putting stuff on social media faster than I can get to a computer to send you an email or call somebody to say, hey, this is going on. It's a pretty big event when they're shutting down roads and doing other stuff related to police activity. But the reality is 82% said, hey, we believe safe and orderly environment exists. 58% respondents marked recruit, retain high quality staff as their first priority. You would notice too, when you had time to analyze the data, you would notice that a great many of those folks, depending on who they are, right? Like parents probably wouldn't, some might mark not enough information. I don't know that. When you talk about budgeting practices and that, I don't know that stuff. So you can look at the data yourself and make that determination. From all of that, the next slide, Bonnie, we kind of came up with 5 different areas. And this, keep in mind, this is about 3 months worth of work to get to this point. So I know it's anticlimactic to just show you 5 things at the end of months of work. But really, we're focused on, for our strategic plan, and we don't have the exact wording now, because we're still in the planning process, but we've gotten this far using available data that we have, including student data. Student success is one. There we're talking about academic success. We're talking about CTE, making students lifelong learners and being successful citizens, enroll, enlist, employ, those kinds of items. I'm just trying to give you a broad picture of it, right? We haven't wrote the initiatives related to it. This is the big general part until we go down on it. We want the whole student experience for all students. The MTSS process would go in there, providing interventions for students that are tier 2 and tier 3 that aren't learning. So you're talking about student success, that's kind of a broad, general, just trying to give you a little bit of like, what does that mean? It's a broad topic. Talent management, we've seen that's kind of the new buzzword for recruit, retain individuals. I would say also part of that is professional development, because if you're recruiting people into a job in which their capacity needs to be built, right, because they don't have the capacity yet, they need to learn, and professional development's a huge part of that, right?
I think we should call it managed talent.
Managed talent, okay.
Sorry, I just like it.
Family and community engagement, obviously we want family and community engagement. Those within the school, parents, the community, the foundation, others, ideas come to mind relative to family and community engagement. Then a safe and positive learning environment. No doubt that is a goal. It's a goal statewide. The events, the use of social media and some of the things that happen make our environment more challenging than it ever has been, related to promoting a safe and positive learning environment, right? So there's PBIS involved in that. There's providing it, making school a place where kids want to be there. How about that as a goal? Then the last one is fiscal and operational efficiency. You guys can get that, certainly managing growth fits under that, technology fits under that, efficient use of resources fits under that, for example. You can just see like, I mean, I got excited. I thought, oh my gosh, I can see like a lot, you know, of stuff that could be strategic for us as we progress forward. So the next step in the process, body, is, and we'll give you a one-sheeter with all these dates on it, but community meetings for folks to get together. We're looking at having them in different areas of the county, which will be Keystone, Oakleaf, and Fleming, 3 community meetings. So remember, that's those 3 community meetings, plus the Spring Park rezoning meetings. There's 4, right, plus other events, the Orange Park High School grand unveiling, all of that. That's just mentioned this meeting. We'll give you a list to kind of help out with that. And so that's the end of the presentation related to strategic planning. And so the process would be, we're going to garner more information from our stakeholders at those meetings, and then we're going to start the process of looking at initiatives related to that. And so if you have ideas along the way, next month or so, you know, now would be a great time to kind of bring them forward so we can include them within the plan. I believe last time, I always try to be inclusive, you know, of folks. I don't believe that we had the same inclusive nature related to the writing of the strategic plan, but I wasn't part of that process. I think the strategic plan was just presented. Right? We want parents to have a chance to provide input into it and be transparent, so that's what we're attempting to do.
I may be jumping the gun a little bit, but I think Ms. Skipper may be asking you to put something in the strategic plan about portable reduction.
It might fit under operational.
Could be under
efficiency.
Yes.
So
In the plan, in general.
Somewhere in there.
So in that vein, I think we've been invited as a board to have some input on the strategic plan, and I'd like for us to kind of collaborate about that. I know the January meeting's coming up quickly, so I'm thinking for the February meeting, we'll put an item on the discussion agenda where we can each share a priority that we think falls into one of these 5 categories. The county commission does that, I think every year. They bring forward priorities for each commissioner, and historically the board's never operated that way. So I think this is an awesome invitation to be a part of the real work that's happening here, to have some goals that we can measure as a board with, and report back to constituents.
How about the idea of doing it in the next workshop?
Okay, so the January.
And the only reason why I say that is because, you know, the workshop is really where the real work happens. You know, I know that board meetings are important, but they're really ceremonial, in which we celebrate students and all of the things that are happening within our district, and and we should take the time to do that. And so if you noticed, the board meetings are the place where we celebrate the work that you've done, and the real work happens here.
So would you guys all be comfortable with that, the January workshop, agenda workshop?
Only one?
As one.
I think maybe 1 is a good starting point. We've never done this before.
It's on the 24th of January.
Pick out a whole list.
So keep in mind,
That's what she said.
No, just one, and it has to be measurable.
One. Just one.
Just kidding.
keep in mind, this could be an easier process for us. So I think having one thing to work on this
It's 100% more than
will be
before.
a good place. It is 100% more than
And
before.
come up with a backup, and somebody else may pick that one. Portables will just be.
We'll give you portables, Ms. Skipper.
No, that's going to the legislator, I get another one.
Actually,
Actually, that's already included.
So, you know, one of the challenges is too, when you, I try to have open communication, and I've called everyone here several times, related to that, and continue to do that. But one of the challenges is when we develop priorities, it's important to know all of the inner workings of the other pieces and how they interrelate. And as a board member, sometimes you're looking at it from 38,000 feet, and the actual implementation is done by the people that you see sitting around the room in front of you. Right, so it's important to recognize that in the planning process. And of course, I'll be all too glad to guide when the time comes to ensure that we're all rowing in the same direction for our district. This is a top 10 school district, an A-rated school district. What if only 14 districts to be academically high performing, which includes budgeting practices, right? So I think that when you look to seek offices, it's about what are the things that need to improve. When you get into office, it's about how do we improve upon the great work that's already being done.
Okay.
That's it.
Alrighty. So that concludes the items that we had to cover on our agenda. Did you have anything further you wanted to add, Mr. Superintendent?
No, ma'am, I talked enough.
Did you have anything you wanted to add? Mr. Victor? Did you have? And any further remarks from the school board?
Just Merry Christmas, everyone. And
Yes, Merry
Happy
Christmas.
New Year and
Happy
Happy
New Year.
Hanukkah.
Can I get some shout
Happy
outs?
Sure.
We can go in order.
Kwanzaa. And I just have, I have an appointment I have to go to, I'm sorry, but congratulations, Dr. Shepherd.
Oh.
Huge. Awesome.
Join the club.
Pinnacle, yeah.
Ms. Hanson?
Well, as a teacher, I was just in my room 12 hours, 10 hours a day, and I was always too tired to go see some of the more fun events in the county. I want to give a couple shout outs. Bannerman Learning Center, Miss Palmer, every year they produce this fantastic, and I ate it, a lot of it, so I can tell you, a really, really special time for the kids and the faculty. A Christmas dinner, and we're privileged to serve that dinner, and they're doing remarkable things at Bannerman, and I think that's something we should be proud of. At Lake Asbury Junior High, a big shout out to Mr. Gould, because his passion for kids was completely obvious, and his exquisite taste and song choice. I really enjoyed the concert. Lake Asbury Elementary, I cannot tell you, I was there with Mr. Broski, how much we smiled during their Christmas presentation with Ms. Tobias. And last but not least, I was really honored to sit on the stage, remember?
Yes.
I love sitting on the stage, at the Clay County Adult and Community Education graduation, where people are truly getting a second chance at life, and the touching stories about I became a mom. It took me 3 times to get to this point, but I want a better life for my kids, and I think that's where the people of Clay County stand. And I appreciate all the invitations. Well, I went to the
you went to
youth challenge.
FLICA. That's right, that's right.
It was really, really impressive and very nice, so thank
And they
you.
will continue, it's always fun.
Ms. Clark?
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, we're in the middle of that. It was enjoyable Saturday, because I was part of Raise Across America, and we actually, for the first time, went to the St. Margaret's Episcopal Church for the first year, and put wreaths on the veterans. And lo and behold, the Oak Leaf, ROTC, what do you call it, the drill team,
Okay.
were there, and big part of the ceremony. So it's always neat to go out and see where our students are, that we don't hear about. There's a lot of times, you've got 5 things going on and you don't hear everything that all the students are participating in. So it's always enjoyable to see.
Ms. Gifford?
I just want to say that I yesterday had the honor to go down to the Florida Blueprint with our governor and his team, and they put essentially a spinoff of the FSBA and the direction the state is headed in the education agenda and parental rights, and how he has no intention of stopping or hitting his brakes. He is full throttle ahead with the legislation sessions. He's going to actually be fighting even harder for our teachers. So with our veteran pay moving forward, and actually helping more for our teachers and different avenues and angles. And then also just helping educate our boards, doing more for us, giving us more guidance, which is kind of like what they did yesterday was awesome. I really thoroughly enjoyed myself yesterday. And then just continuing to make the positive changes and turns in education. So that was very, very insightful yesterday, and I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and all the good things.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.
All right, and with that, our meeting is adjourned.
No comments, Ms. Gilmore? You're like,
I said enough.
I thought you said anyway. I said
My gift to you is that you go home now.